This is Brent, president of B2C Fitness, and we're going to talk about the lunge, one of the last exercises, one of the hardest exercises in our lower body strength or resistance training progression. Now, it falls so far within our progression because it requires a huge amount of stability and coordination, as well as optimal extensibility of both our lower leg and lumbo-pelvic hip complex. So an example of where a lunge would not be appropriate, if somebody has an anterior pelvic tilt, or they have feet turned out a little bit, in that overhead squat assessment, you're going to have to regress this exercise to either a step up, squat, or a modified squat while you work on that dysfunction, and then you can progress back to this exercise when they can get near optimal mechanics after their warm-up. So I'm going to have Laura come in and help me demonstrate this exercise. And what we're going to try to do is match the lunge with all of the other lower body exercises we do as far as form's concerned. It's really not that much different. So from the anterior view, from the front view, we just want to make sure the feet, knees, and hips are in a nice straight alignment, just like we would for a squat or a step up. I'm going to have Laura go ahead and step back into this lunge. Good. And she has nice alignment. We see feet, knees, and hips all in a straight line. The biggest dysfunction you guys will probably see is that in some people, this back leg has a tendency to veer out a little bit. If that happens, one of two things is happening. Either they're leaning back, or they still have some residual tightness in either their rectus femoris, or sometimes their TFL. You're going to have to go back and go ahead and say it back up. You're going to have to go back and do a little bit of foam rolling and stretching, and then try this exercise again. Usually if you get somebody's rectus femoris loosened up, their lunge will look just fine. Go ahead and turn sideways for me. Now, from the side view, we still want a parallel line between tibia torso, and we want to make sure that we have a neutral alignment of the pelvis. So I'm going to have Laura go ahead and step back with this leg. Good. And back down into her lunge. And you can see she does the lunge that so many of us have been taught with back straight up and down. All right, you can go ahead and stand straight back up again. Good. Now the problem with that lunge is if you put that back leg back and then lean back, you're forced to load this back leg. This back leg is in a stretched position. It's not in any sort of position that is going to be able to produce an optimal amount of force. And the idea behind a lunge is that we're trying to strengthen that front leg. It's like a squat with a kickstand. To demonstrate this, I'm going to have Laura go down into a squat. Just go straight down into a squat. There we go. And then I want you to shift your weight to this leg. Good, and then move this leg back. One-legged squat with the kickstand. All this is doing is stabilizing. We're trying to load this leg. Good. And then come back up for me. Good. Go back down. So when she goes back down, I still want this back leg straight up and down. I get people to think of a merry-go-round horse. You know, they have the poles through the center of them. This should go straight up and down. But we notice that Laura still has this straight up and down back too. What I'll usually do with an individual like this is have them reach. Go ahead and stand back up. There you go. As she goes down, I'm going to have her reach with the opposite hand of the foot that's forward. Good. And we get a little bit of a forward bend there. Now we have her in hip flexion, her glutes stretched out so it's loaded, knowing that I'm going to get her glute to fire on the way back up. Go ahead and come back up. Perfect. Back down. Good. You start to feel that on your front leg?
Oh, yeah.
Usually you start getting people to do this, and I understand it's a little excessive of a forward lean at this point, but it's teaching her the proper mechanics, so we're going to go ahead and start here. Now with Laura, this is probably where I would stay. If I was going to progress from a strength progression, I'd just add some dumbbells. From a stability progression, I might add an Eric's pad or some other piece of balance equipment in front of this front foot. Once I got her to do proper mechanics, there are a couple ways to progress this static to plane static lunge. So I'm going to go ahead and just start standing straight up. First progression we can utilize, you guys probably have heard of, is a reverse lunge. So let's go ahead and go down into a reverse lunge. Good. And back up. You can see Laura still has that straight up lunge. So what I want you to do is when you're doing that reverse lunge, still use the forward touch. Good. And get back up with this right glute. Good. Down. Tell people to thrust forward with their hips as they come back up to get that right glute. You can see her reverse lunge looks pretty good as long as she does this cue. If I wanted to increase the stability, I could have her go from reverse lunge to balance. Good, and then to balance, so she's not going to put this leg back down. The only place this leg is going to touch is behind her. Good. If she really had that down, I could then put a piece of balance equipment under this right foot. Now, A progression from this would be the standard front lunge. The reason a front lunge is harder than a back lunge is in a reverse lunge, the foot that is decelerating or slowing her down on the way down is still on the floor. In the front lunge, she's going to build up momentum that she then has to decelerate with that front leg. So go ahead and back up a little bit for me. There you go. All right, now let's see your front lunge. You guys can see there's a little bit of impact there. Good. Take a little farther step, and I still want you to reach forward. Good. And back up. All right, back up just a little bit more. A little forward step. You can see that her back leg is still not straight up and down. Good. And back up. So reverse lunge would have been good for Laura. This is probably a little tough. We could then do a front lunge to balance, just like we did on the previous exercise. You could then go ahead and add stability equipment here. It's pretty rare that I get somebody to be able to do a front lunge to balance on a piece of stability equipment. That'd be tough. If we wanted to add weight, we could definitely do that. If we were in a strength training program, of course we could do walking lunges at a little faster tempo if we were more in a power training program and working towards a little bit more speed. I hope the cues that I just gave you help you guys out. I hope you feel your front leg when you're doing lunges. I'll talk to you guys soon.